tax rate, be it ever so minor, but the more we do it, the more it adds up. It's not going to prevent me from being in favor of this project, but when it comes up, I do like to bring it to people's attention that, 8 last year, 12 this year, this tax money comes from somebody else if we take this and take it off the tax rolls, and that's all the rest of the taxpayers. So we need to be aware of the fact that when we do this, that tax money goes somewhere else. The responsibility for those tax payments goes somewhere else.
Councilor, can I add, you're absolutely right. Philosophically, I agree with you. In terms of the actual numbers, though, remember the numbers of taxes include the revenue that we get for taxes because there's a cell tower on the site, right. And that's the biggest piece. So the land that's actually in 61B, I don't know the number. I should have checked it before I came here, but I think that portion is a lot less.
Yeah, I did look at this, and I think that the market value of it is like $1.9 million or something. The Chapter 61 value is $675 or something like that. Yep. So the tax break is substantial, and the $12,000 is the 61 value without consideration for its full value. That's the 61 value, and that little piece with the cell tower is responsible for quite a bit of the income, but at the same time that money kind of goes away. Councilor Dwight, you had a
well. It was relative to the 4 building lots, which, you're right, actually, if this were allowed to be fully developed out and saturated, you would realize more revenue. But is the valuation on the 4 lots, the 4 building lots, somehow offset the revenue loss that Councilor Murphy's describing?
Yes. No, we did not run a full projection, so I'm not going to give you numbers, but 3 of those 4 lots that have spectacular view of the Hoyoke Range would be among the most expensive lots we have with great views. The one along Old Wilson Road is going to be more modest. So, very high-end. We want housing in all price range, but the reality is the very high-end housing is the one that we make money on. The more modest ones we don't. But I don't. So yes, in concept makes up for a lot of it. We could run the numbers by your second reading if you want. We haven't done that yet.
I mean, it would, as to Councilor Murphy's remark, it wouldn't affect my vote. But I mean, when we're speaking philosophically in that respect, is it a zero-sum game? Is it a wash, or is it a loss, a significant loss of taxable revenue, or from the current state? So that's my question.
Well, we're in good shape if those are high-end houses and those kids go to Williston. If they go to Northampton Public Schools, we lose money, ultimately.
Well, that's true. And in fact, actually, if that whole property was built out, it would even be greater pressure, and the cost would be even more substantial then.
It's been a golf course for a long time. Because there's a lot of wetland there, it probably couldn't even be a golf course today because there's wetlands all through the middle of it. So it generates the money, and it's a golf course because it preceded lots of things. It would never exist if it hadn't preceded all of those regulations. So there's no way it's going to be built out. In fact, I think the 8 lots or so was pretty much without sewer what it could be because you couldn't perk it. Yeah.
All good points, and that's what my questions were. Is that the fact that it will not be a golf course anymore? We lose that revenue regardless.
Yeah, about the only thing it could stay would be a golf course because that's what's grandfathered. I think you couldn't really do much else with it. And it would generate that kind of revenue.
It would have to be grandfathered in.
And it's only because it's a pre-existing golf course. Right. It couldn't even be that again. Councilor Labarge?
Yes, Councilor Shearer. It's in your ward. Have you been there?
I've certainly been by it, yes. I've never golfed there.
No, but you've seen the property
Yes.
inside. It's absolutely beautiful.
Stunning, yes.
Councilor Bidwell, you had a question.
Well, I think it would be helpful. I'd like to take you up on your offer to run the numbers because it doesn't sound to me like it'd be too hard to imagine $8,000 or $9,000 or $10,000 of taxes coming in from 3 relatively high-end lots. And so if that's the case, we might be sacrificing $2,000 or $3,000 in taxes and not 12. And I just think it wouldn't be a bad idea to, even though it's going to be a rough estimate, to just...
And frankly, one of those lots built out with an appropriate home is going to generate that kind of revenue.
Yeah.
You know?
So
it's there are a number of houses
So we-
in Northampton that generate $12,000 tax bills.
We could wind up with, so we could wind up with more in taxes after than what we get now. And at the same time have added substantially to
Yeah.
our conservation levels.
Counselor.
You were wondering about it. Wayne, so the idea is to return this to forest. Is there any thought to returning it to what it, I don't know what it doesn't, I don't think it believes in, it says in here what it used to be, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Maybe it was forest, I don't know.
So Mass Audubon, I do a lot of things, but I'm not good at any of them. So Mass Audubon is much more specialized, so they're taking the lead in sort of a rehabilitation plan, and so we're just in early stages. What I do know for sure is the stream through the middle and the historical wetlands, and as Councilor Murphy pointed out, the historical wetlands are a lot bigger than the current wetlands. Those we'd want to restore to their wetlands functioning. The rest, I think we just need to do more assessment for doing it. The other thing, just to be clear, is its restoration will be a many-year process, particularly because it's going to be grant-driven. Again, we're not planning to use city funds for doing it. So we have a master plan, so we know where we're going, but it's going to be a long time to get there in the process. The first step would certainly be to restore natural flow in the stream. And to the extent that they're exposed, not all of them are, to stop the underground drainage that's dewatering the wetlands. So we know where do that piece, but we don't really know the long-term answer for doing it.
So to put on my pesticide reduction hat, which comes up a little later, I just know that golf courses are notorious for using all sorts of chemicals and stuff to maintain greens especially, but also in terms of the fairways and stuff like that. Are we worried about any of that in terms of, as we're restoring this to its natural, restoring it to being a conservation area?
So in the normal course of these things, we certainly would be doing environmental site assessment, a hazardous waste investigation. So we don't have any red flags. There's no reason we're particularly concerned, but we're certainly going to investigate both herbicides and just fertilizers. But we're not particularly concerned at this point.
Okay.
I will say, of the lots that we're carving out, the lot that includes a current modest house, that was sort of their operations center. And so we're happy not to inherit that to the extent there was ever a spill for oil or that kind of thing. That's just not going to be part of our property.
Councilor Labarge, you didn't see any three-headed turkeys up there, did you?
Yeah.
You did see them? Uh-oh. Gotta be careful.
He's looking at one now.
And I know, and I do know
next
that
time,
on Wilson Road, the neighbors are very happy about the conservation land and also about 4 houses.
So, is there any other comment?
It's amazing, isn't it?
Hearing none, do we have
Really do this goofy, guys.
a motion for a positive recommendation of finance?
Aye.
Aye.
It's not like a motion and a vote.
Any nod in favor? Let's jump to that. Okay. Moving right along. 19082, in order to, we're down to 5.8 acres in the Broadbrook Fitzgerald Lake Greenway. Order that, again, recommendation of the Mayor, Planning and Sustainability and Conservation Commission. Order that whereas the Open Space Recreation and Multi-Use Trail Plan 2018 to 2025 recommends preserving ecologically valuable land and filling gaps at the Broadbrook Fitzgerald Lake Greenway, and whereas the city has an option to purchase approximately 5.8 acres off Boggy Meadow Road in the heart of the Broadbrook Fitzgerald Lake Greenway for $6,000, and whereas the city is partnering with Broadbrook Coalition, who we expect will help fund the project, order that the Conservation Commission is authorized to purchase or otherwise acquire for conservation and passive recreation purposes, as provided by Mass General Law, Chapter 40, subsection 8C, any fee, easement, or conservation restriction as defined in Mass General Law, Chapter 184, subsection 31, or any other interest in the above land and any immediately adjoining land, and that the City Council hereby accepts such conservation restrictions, that the Conservation Commission is authorized to grant conservation restrictions and related easements on any land so acquired, and that the Conservation Commission is authorized to contract for and expend any federal, state, or other aid available for this project, with such related restrictions and agreements as the city determines that are agreeable. Further, that any grants, donations, or sales shall be used to reimburse open space funds used for this purpose. We have a motion,
Make a motion.
and we have a second. This is an easier one, I guess.
Yes, and this is much more modest. It's, we have conservation land sort of all around this area. We would someday like to close off Boggy Meadow Road, because not often, but occasionally problems with people dumping. And so this land's desirable for a lot of reasons. It's not developed. You can see from the price, it could never
Yeah.
be developed.
And it's out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by the rest of the Is this one of the last pieces out there? Because I'm assuming the road, that old Boggy Meadow has to provide access to private property out there.
Right, so we can't close until we get owners. There's
Until you
two
get it
large
all.
owners. So the Fitzgerald family,
Yep.
goes all the way back to Fitzgerald Fence. Their property wraps around and actually surrounds this property on three sides. And then there's one other private property owner out there. This is an odd one, I mean, because it's very small in the middle there.
Any questions on this one? All in favor of a positive recommendation of finance, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, great. All right, the next one is 19083, in order to convey a permanent historic preservation restriction for Bridge Road Cemetery. Whereas the Bridge Road, or Bridge Street, not Bridge Road, Bridge Street Cemetery, established in 1661 as the city's oldest place of interment and an important historic landscape that is a critical piece of the Pomeroy Terrace Historic District. And whereas in 2016, Preservation Master Plan for the cemetery identified 13 priority preservation projects necessary to preserve and manage the historic cemetery, and whereas the Massachusetts Historical Commission Preservation Project funded a grant up to 50% reimbursement for projects that support the preservation of properties, landscapes, and sites listed in the State Register of Historic Places, which requires that areas selected for funding be protected by permanent preservation restrictions. And whereas the city has received $50,000 in state funds to conserve the highest priority threatened gravestones at the cemetery, order that the city, acting through its mayor, is authorized to convey a perpetual historic preservation restriction on the Bridge Street Cemetery to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts by and through the Massachusetts Historical Commission. Further, that the city of Northampton confirms fee title of the Bridge Street Cemetery, an ancient burial ground for which no deed of record is found. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second?
So this one's fairly straightforward. Just 2 points I want to point out. One is we're choosing the boundaries of the cemetery as basically being the fence itself. So that way we're preserving all the history, but some of you may know there's been a lot of discussion about Bridge Street School and should there be on-street parking and should there be sidewalks. We didn't want to do anything that limits that, so we're far enough away from the road that if the final, I'm not suggesting that is the solution, but if the final solution is on-street parking, there's room to do that. We could expand the right-of-way. The other thing that's weird about the deed is these very old properties don't have deeds. There was a grant, I guess, from the king. I'm not sure the process. But we went through this. Some of you, I can't remember how long this was. Some of you may have been on council when we acquired Sheldon Field. It was a similar process. There wasn't a deed for it, and so we're actually going to be granting a deed to ourselves because that's the condition of the grant we have.
A question?
You're not preserving the fence, though, right?
Correct.
Because I would
Not as part of
love
this process.
someday for it to.
Right.
Be nicer.
But we're just sort of seeing it as that's the limit of the hollow ground.
That's just one of my personal things that I've always would love to see Bridge Street Cemetery to not have that fence around it because it's one of the most beautiful places.
Councilor Nash?
Director Fiden, in terms of what we're doing right here, it's going to allow us to be open up to future grants, and I mean.
That's correct. It allows us, this grant we already have. So we have two grants right now. We have the
So we're
state-
doing a little catch-up here, maybe,
doing
or?
a little catch up here.
Okay.
It's a condition of the grant that they won't actually write us a check until we complete this. But yes, it makes us eligible for other grants. There aren't a lot of cemetery grants out there. There's the
Right.
Historical Commission, Mass Historic Commission, and there used to be a state parks grant for cemeteries. Doesn't exist anymore, but it could again.
Thank you.
Councilor Bidwell.
So what would be permitted and what would not be permitted within the cemetery itself? Replacement of, repair and maintenance and replacement of grave markers would be
Yeah,
permitted?
anything that's consistent with a cemetery, anything you can imagine being a cemetery is allowed. The city may or may not want to allow it, but it would be allowed, the preservation restriction. What wouldn't be allowed would be disinterring bodies and moving them elsewhere and developing into something different. So any cemetery use, whether we're doing them now or not, it would be permitted. And then the graves themselves that we're spending money on, both CPA money
Right.
and Mass Historic, those we have to.
But if the city wanted to put up interpretive signage within, all that's not going to be any impediments to anything like that.
That's correct.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor of a positive recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Excellent. So now it's time to spend some serious money. This is 19084, in order to approve the 2020 general fund budget. Upon the recommendation of the mayor, order that the sum of $94,706,462, which is the full amount necessary for the fiscal year 2020 general fund budget, which is July 1, 19 to June 30, 2020, be appropriated for the purposes stated, provided that the appropriations for Smith Vocational and Agricultural School shall be solely for the purposes of meeting net school spending as defined by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. No funds so appropriated shall be transferred to any other account or expended for any other purpose that would not be included in the calculation of net school spending. To meet this appropriation, $1,857,164 will be raised and appropriated from the parking meter receipts reserved, $935,319 from the sewer enterprise funds, $620,420 from the water enterprise funds, $104,721 from the solid waste enterprise funds, $280,008 from the stormwater enterprise funds, $15,776 from the Community Preservation Act administrative funds, $23,306 from the reserve for police station debt service, $775,874 from the fiscal stability stabilization fund, and $90,093,874 will be raised and appropriated. Do we have a motion to finance?
The motion.
Second? We've talked about this for a while. Any other questions for the mayor on this? Hearing none, all in favor of a positive recommendation in finance, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now we have some enterprise funds. This is 19085, in order to approve the FY 2020 sewer enterprise fund budget. Order that the sum of $6,490,000, which is the full amount necessary for the fiscal year 2020 sewer enterprise budget from July 1, 19 to June 30, 2020, be appropriated for the purposes stated. To meet said appropriation, $5,555,681 is to be raised from the sewer receipts, and $935,319 shall be allocated to indirect costs. Do we have a motion, finance?
The motion.
Second?
Second.
Any question on this one for the mayor? Hearing none, all in favor of positive recommendation in finance, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The next is 19086, in order to approve FY 2020 Water Enterprise Fund budget. Order that the sum of $7,280,000, which is the full amount necessary for the fiscal year 2020 Water Enterprise Fund budget, July 1 to July 1, whoops, we got this one. This one is not correct. July 1, it says July 1, 18 to June 30, 19, so we're going to need to correct that. On my copy, that's what it says.
It says 2018.
Yeah.
Scribner's.
It's not correct here, but it should be July July 1, 20, or 19 to June 30, 20. the appropriated for the purposes stated, and to meet said appropriation, $6,659,580 is to be raised from water receipts, and $620,420 shall be allocated to indirect costs. So again, this is fiscal year 2020 running from July 1, 19 to June 30, 2020. Do we have a motion in finance?
Motion.
With the error corrected.
Right.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion on this one? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right. And then 19087, an order to approve the FY 2020 Solid Waste Enterprise Fund budget. Order that the sum of $602,659, which is the full amount necessary for the fiscal year 2020 Solid Waste Enterprise budget, July 1, 19 to June 30, 2020, be appropriated. The purpose is stated, and to meet said appropriation, $376,279 is to be raised from solid waste receipts, and $104,721 shall be allocated to indirect costs, and $121,659 shall be made available from retained earnings balance of the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. Do we have a motion in finance?
Make a motion.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the next is 19088, an order to approve the FY 2020 Stormwater and Flood Control Enterprise Fund budget. Order that the sum of $1,996,486, which is the full amount necessary for the fiscal year 2020 Stormwater Flood Control Enterprise Fund budget from July 1, 19 to June 30, 2020, be appropriated for the purposes stated, and to meet said appropriation, $1,706,487 is to be raised from the stormwater flood control receipts, and $280,008 shall be allocated to indirect costs. Do we have a motion in finance?
Make a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next is 19089, in order to approve the FY 2020 revolving funds. Order that in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, the city shall vote a limit on the total amounts that may be expended from each revolving fund established by Chapter 16 of the ordinances. And I'm going to read them off to you. These are all revolving funds. Energy and Sustainability Revolving Fund, $150,000. Hazmat Revolving Fund, $85,000. DPW Public Works Construction Services Revolving Fund, $85,000. Senior Services Transportation Revolving Fund, $100,000. Senior Services Activities Revolving Fund, $90,000. Senior Services Gift Shop Revolving Fund, $20,000. Senior Services Food Service Revolving Fund, $35,000. Senior Services Publications Revolving Fund, $35,000. Senior Trips and Travel Revolving Fund, $75,000. Athletic League Fee Revolving Fund, $200,000. JFK Family Aquatic Center Fund, $120,000. Northampton Public Schools Transportation Revolving Fund, $200,000. Smith Vocational High School Farm Revolving Fund, $100,000. Tourism Directional Sign Program Revolving Fund, $10,000. Public Health Nursing Program Revolving Fund, $30,000. James House Revolving Fund, $85,000. Sharps Disposal Program Revolving Fund, $15,000. Fire Alarm Monitoring Program Revolving Fund, $60,000. And DPW Reuse Committee Revolving Fund, $15,000. We have a motion in finance?
I have a question.
I'll move.
Can we move it and then we'll get the second? All right. A question for the mayor?
Yes. Mayor, on Senior Services Gift Shop Revolving Fund, didn't they close the gift shop? Because I see it looks like a library in there.
Yeah, the gift shop has closed. I'll probably bring an order at some point to close this fund, but because the ordinances, under the Municipal Modernization Act, they made us codify all these revolving funds in the ordinances.
Okay.
So I just left the limit in there, but we're probably going to close this one.
Thank you.
That would take a separate ordinance that you'd have to go through the whole process of ordinances, so.
Thank you.
So any more questions on the revolving funds? Then all in favor of a positive recommendation in finance, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. The next is 19090, in order to rescind borrowing authority. Order that the City Council rescinds the following orders because such borrowing authority is no longer necessary. There are three of them. Order 18059. It's a $200,000 borrowing authority authorized under a loan approved on April 15th, 2018 to expand the Parsons Brook Greenway with the purchase of parcels of land abutting Parsons Brook Greenway as the borrowing is no longer needed. Order 1134, a $400,000 borrowing authority authorized under a loan order approved August 16, 2018 to create the Rocky Hill Greenway multi-use trails through Burt's Bog Greenway as the borrowing authority is no longer needed. And Order 18181, $120,000 borrowing authority authorized under a loan order approved November 1st, 2018 for the acquisition of 119 acres in the Mineral Hills area as that borrowing is no longer needed. Do we have a motion, Finance?
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
These are the three orders that Mr. Fiden referred to from previous acquisition projects where we applied for grants and got you to give us borrowing authority, and we didn't end up using the borrowing authority, so we want to rescind it. Because even though it's not a real borrowing authority, it does still count.
It hangs around, so we got to cancel.
Against our, debt. So we want to get it off the books.
Right, Counselor?
I'm not sure what the reference to is. The three votes just means the three different
These
orders.
three orders.
No, I've never seen that.
I mean, do we need to actually take these as a group?
No, those were that's just a reference to the orders that you originally passed.
I see. So the three votes is, so
Yeah,
we
there
can
are
just.
three of
So
them.
you're just rescinding these three orders.
Got it.
We're just identifying them by name so that they tie back to those orders.
And just the borrowing.
Just the borrowing.
It's a borrowing authority.
Not the
Yeah,
purchase.
because it never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No.
Then all in favor of a positive recommendation of Finance, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And our last one is 19092. In order to rescind unused borrowing authority for Mass School Building Authority projects at the Bridge Street and Leeds School roof projects. Order that the City Council rescind the unused and unneeded borrowing capacity authorized for the following Massachusetts School Building Authority projects: Bridge Street Elementary School roof and parapet project. The order was dated March 16, 2017. It authorized $1,641,901 for this project, and only $500,000 was needed to be borrowed to provide for the city's share of the project expenses, and therefore the council rescinds $1,141,901 of the borrowing authority. And then Leeds Elementary School roof Phase 2 project, that order was March 16, 2017. It authorized $1,775,294 for this project. Only $500,000 was needed to be borrowed and provide the city's share of the project expenses, and therefore the council rescinds $1,275,294 of the borrowing authority. We have a motion on these.
Make a motion.
Second. Any other questions for
Somewhat analogous to the other ones where this is a grant program, and so we, city's full faith and credit out there, and then we got reimbursement for the MSBA projects from the state, so we didn't have to use the full borrowing authority. So we're rescinding the remaining borrowing authority that we don't want to use.
Any other questions for the mayor on this one? Hearing none, all in favor of positive recommendation of Finance?
Aye.
All in favor of adjourning Finance, please say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to go through those financial orders. Since they were just read, I'm just going to read their titles.
Yep.
First one is 19.081, in order to borrow money and authorize acquisition of 100 acres at Pine Grove Golf Course.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on this? Roll call, please, when you are ready.
Councilor Fine.
Yes.
Councilor Dwight.
Yes.
Councilor Fine. Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nash.
Yes.
And Councilor Shara.
Yes.
And Councilor Bidwell.
Yes.
Okay. Next is 19.082, in order to purchase 5.8 acres in the Broadbrook Fitzgerald Lake Greenway.
Move approval.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on this order? No? Roll call, please.
Councilor Dwight.
Yes.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Councilor Shara.
Yes.
Councilor Bidwell.
Yes.
And Councilor Fine.
Yes.
Okay. The next one is 19.083. In order to convey a permanent historic preservation restriction for Bridge Street Cemetery, there's been a request for 2 readings.
Move to approve.
It's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Nope. Roll call, please.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Councilor Shara.
Yes.
Councilor Bidwell.
Yes.
Councilor Carney.
Yes.
And Councilor Dwight.
Yes.
Suspend the rule.
Second.
It's been made to suspend rules. All those in favor?
Aye.
Second reading.
Move to second reading.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call when you're ready, Laura.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Councilor Shara.
Yes.
Councilor Bidwell.
Yes.
Councilor Carney.
Yes.
Councilor Dwight.
Yes.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
That passes in its second reading. Next is 19.084, in order to approve the fiscal year 2020 general fund budget.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the budget? Counselor Dwight?
Just a comment. I mean, I think we all know that, I think several of us have been, if not all of us, have been entreated to vote down a budget that does not reflect, in order to somehow position ourselves to encourage an increased salary contract for the teachers of Northampton schools. And I just want to say that I'm going to vote to approve this, because to vote down the general fund budget while this is in mediation, and in fact the public should be aware, this is a mediation. If the settlement comes out that there is more money that's required, the mayor will come and ask us for permission to allocate that money based on the agreement. We should not be involved, because I have enormous respect for labor and labor governance and the labor process, which includes collective bargaining. And we pervert that if we interfere in any way. At the same time, I mean, because we're not privy to the levels of negotiations, the pressures and the conflicts, and it'd be really inappropriate for us to actually jeopardize the entire budget just to make a demonstration. That is not a mature or responsible way to do fiscal oversight. So in that regard, I will be voting in favor of this budget.
Those comments, I agree. Any other comments on, yes, Counselor Bidwell?
I agree with that also, and like all my colleagues, we've received literally hundreds of emails and a few phone calls and a few postcards and letters, and my response is that there's just, besides it not being our place to step in and it being totally inappropriate to interfere in any way with collective bargaining, I would not presume to be in position to substitute my judgment for the judgment of the school committee, the superintendent, and the mayor, who have been involved at a tremendous level of detail in all of this. And it really is only one option for us as a city council, and that is to approve the budget and be prepared for a budget adjustment if necessary down the road.
Counselor Carney?
Just a point of clarification, I guess. So we're familiar with the section 7-4B in the charter. I think we've got some communications around that, but I'll just read this one sentence. It does say, under adoption of the budget, the city council shall adopt the proposed operating budget, which may have amendments within 45 days following the date the proposed budget is filed with the city clerk. So I don't understand, I mean, it's been my understanding reading this that voting down the budget is not even an option. That what we can only do are make amendments to the budget in the form of deletions, and that we don't, if we do vote, if we don't adopt the proposed, and I don't even, see, it says that the council shall adopt the budget, so I don't understand that we even have the option to to vote, I mean, I suppose we can vote, but sounds to me like we're required to adopt it unless we delayed. So maybe as a point of clarification, that could be, and maybe to the president, council vice president right here, or the mayor, or someone who could just clarify
The
that.
city solicitor has opined on this.
Yes.
Yes.
He has.
And I think he essentially said that he interprets it the same way you do, that
Okay.
we have to have a budget in place by July 1st. So you could ignore the budget as a form of protest and
Right.
not take any action on it, but then the charter and Mass General Law says the budget would then go into effect.
Right,
Because
right.
we can't operate within the budget. The council has the authority to cut it, but council shall approve sounds pretty clear to me.
Well, that's the way I read it, so should there, hypothetically, should this body, by majority, vote down the budget, for example, the next step would just be that it would be adopted after that
After so
particular
many days.
timeframe. It would be adopted as presented.
I believe that would be the situation most likely.
Okay, yes.
Because, actually oddly enough, because of Mass General Law, we have to have a budget. We are required by law to have a budget. State, not so much, when and if, at their pleasure, when they get to it. We are required to. I'm sure it's because if we dragged our feet, well, there are obvious reasons why you actually have to have a budget. But the fact is, we can amend, there are mechanisms by which we could actually, that we can employ, and they have been employed in the past by previous councilors under the old charter. Particularly one councilor going after a particular department wanted to delete the funding for the salaries, thereby throttling the department. Of course, that councilor didn't get a majority vote. That didn't pass, but that is something we could do. We could functionally, it's a roundabout way. It is, in this case, we can't say that we want this department to have more money. We can simply say, if we voted in toto to cut a department, we could do that, and the mayor would have to actually make accommodations for that. And there are counterpoints to it, too. The mayor can come back. And this is the part that's confusing to me, and I think that it's kind of what you're asking as well. I mean, what's the end game and what's the final product and what is the ultimate authority over the budget? So, and something I continue to ask, and the state's not very forthcoming as far as a clear and decisive response.
From my perspective, and certainly the finance director and probably the city auditor, we have to meet payroll on July 1st. I mean, you think about
You
the
have legal
government
obligation,
shutdown.
yeah.
Think about the federal government shutdown. If you don't have a budget, you can't pay people, which is why they have to be furloughed, and contract obligations can't get met. So that's the reason why we have to have a budget in place. So, I don't know. I don't know that it's ever been in the history that the council just said we reject the budget.
Right, that's why I brought that up, and so.
Because the orders are presented in a way that it's not you're voting to make those appropriations. You're voting to raise those monies and appropriate those monies, which is what forms the budget. So that's where you would reduce it. But again, I guess you could reject it. I'm not quite sure.
I wasn't looking to reject.
No, I
the budget.
understood that, yeah. No,
The only reason I brought it up is just really for clarification for people who might be watching.
Totally understood.
That, that what we have in our authority is to line item delete, as far as I understand it, and I'm not inclined to make any deletions to the budget. I just wanted it to be clear
Understood.
what our options were as a council. Thank you.
Understood, yeah.
I'll just note, I'm not sure this is going to be at all clarifying, but it's not just our charter that determines what we can do. Mass General Law stipulates that we can only reduce, except there's one exception, which is that, and it's around a school budget, but that's only if the mayor puts forward a budget that is lower than the budget that was submitted by the school committee, which in our case, the mayor is the chair of the school committee. That would be very unusual. And we know that this budget is actually significantly higher than the budget that was voted on by the school committee. So that wouldn't pertain in this case, but.
Okay.
That's
The
my.
only other thing I would add to that is that you also, the city would have had to have accepted a certain section of Mass General Law, which
okay.
our city has not accepted. So that's like an added wrinkle.
Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you for
So
that.
that's another,
Counselor, this is still to this point?
To this
Because I know
point,
that
yeah.
there's some, okay.
It was to this point. Actually, our influence and oversight of the budget is ongoing in the budget process, with exceptions to the school committee, the school budget, which, as the mayor described, is actually in this case, the school committee serves as the executive. And because it's such a significant portion of the budget relative to everything else, it's given that level of importance, the state acknowledges that level of importance and gives it its own representative oversight, and that we don't have the authority to slap down. And that's always important to say, that they're actually a separate legislative body, but also fiscal body that actually makes decisions. All other elements of the budget, as we hear from department heads throughout the year, and as the budgets are proposed, and the mayor makes the budget proposals, the point that we can weigh in on how we think is appropriate. This goes to Councilor Bidwell's suggestion that if it's possible to have maybe even earlier, more participatory conversations, and you know, it's inelegant, but point in fact, actually, it is fairly prescribed, and I think that's been misunderstood by some of us and by the public. It's complicated, but the fact is our level of influence, particularly as it goes with the school budget, comes basically when we have our joint meeting, and that's basically when we get a budget presentation. We don't have the authority to change or dictate any terms there. It's just for purposes of us understanding.
yeah, you can lower the bottom line number of the school budget.
Right.
You can't go into the school
Right.
budget and make cuts, like
Right.
line item type sorts of cuts. Those.
That doesn't seem likely. And it's also, as far as making a demonstration of sorts to levy negotiations, seems kind of cutting off your nose to spite your face, to actually cut school funding in order to try and increase school funding. Not a really good way to go about things.
There are hands over here.
Yeah, only if this is done.
I'm done.
Okay. That was great, though, by the way. I just wanted to, earlier I thanked the mayor for his fine work around pulling this budget together, but I also wanted to thank all of the city administrators for all the work they did. Their presentations indicated to me that they really were thoughtful about the way they went through pulling together the budgets for their departments. And I also especially want to thank Finance Director Wright for all of her fine work. I'm complimenting her now, and look at her.
She's busy. She's working.
I know. But I just appreciate, the mayor is especially competent in speaking to the city finances. But behind him is Finance Director Wright, and when she speaks, she follows these conversations, and she can just get up and just, like Councilor Labarge's question earlier about a fund, and she knew exactly what it was. Yeah, and here's what we're going to do. She always on top of things, and so I want to appreciate my thanks for that work. So, thank you.
Anybody else? I'll just note that we always hope for and beg and plead for public participation in this process, and we actually got it this year. I'm not really sure we deserve the credit for it, but like all good politicians, let's take it and be very glad that we had people come to our budget hearings and comment. That was really great to see people interested in the budget. So let's vote on it. Roll call, please.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell,
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes?
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge. Yes. Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
That passes in first reading. We're now moving on to the enterprise funds. 19.085, in order to approve FY 2020 sewer enterprise fund budget.
Take the enterprise funds as a group.
Yes. Do we need a motion to do that?
Yeah, I'll.
You're going to second that?
Second them as a
I'm
group.
going to second his motion, which is what it sounded like to me.
That's,
All
But it
those
was.
in favor of taking them as a group?
I move we take them as a group.
Aye.
Aye.
That's all the enterprise funds.
The enterprise funds,
So
just the
that-
enterprise funds.
So we're taking 19.085 in order to approve FY 2020 sewer enterprise fund budget, 19.086 in order to approve FY 2020 water enterprise fund budget, 19.087 in order to approve FY 2020 solid waste enterprise fund budget, 19.088 in order to approve FY 2020 stormwater and flood control enterprise fund budget, but not the revolving funds?
No, I do that
Okay.
separately. yeah.
Okay. So we're taking those as a group. Any discussion on this group? Roll call, please.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell,
Yes.
Counselor Carney,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge, Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Okay, moving on to 19.089, in order to approve FY 2020 revolving funds.
Move approval.
Motion's been, it's been, made, seconded. Any discussion on the revolving funds? No? Roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Bidwell,
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge, Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
and Counselor Shara.
Yes.
And I would move the two rescinding borrowing authority items as a group.
Second.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to take those as a group. All those in favor of taking them as a group?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So this is 19.090, in order to rescind borrowing authority, 3 votes. It's 3 different orders that we're rescinding. Order 18.059, Order 18.1134, Order 18.181, and 19.092, in order to rescind unused borrowing authority for MSBA projects Bridge Street and Leeds School roofs. Any discussion on rescinding that borrowing? No? Roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Carney,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight.
Yes.
Counselor Labarge, Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Shara, and
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Okay, those all pass in first reading, except for the one that we did 2 readings for, which passed entirely. Moving on to financial orders on their second reading. We have 19.075, in order to authorize borrowing $15 million for electrical and process upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant.
Approval. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on this order? Counselor Nash?
I just, I want to thank the mayor for clarifying some things with me. I went through the Kleinfelder study, which was the study that was set forth to outlining what we needed to do with our wastewater facility, and I noticed that what we were asking for wasn't quite lining up, and that the reason for the differences were that there's changes in regulations that we're trying to keep up with. Am I saying this correctly, Mayor? And that so that was why things weren't lining up, and but we're on track. We're moving in the direction of the right direction to get everything up to compliance. So
That is good news.
that's all I have to
Any other discussion?
say. Right.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge. Yes. Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Nash. Yes. Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
And Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Okay, 19.077, in order to establish marijuana community impact fee stabilization fund. It's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the stabilization fund? Hearing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Dwight.
Yes.
Okay. Order 19.078, in order to dedicate marijuana host community fees to marijuana community impact fee stabilization fund.
Approval.
It's been made and seconded. Any discussion on dedicating the fees to the fund? Hearing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Dwight.
Yes.
And Counselor Yes.
Okay. We
President,
are,
I just wanted to say I was going to, Ms. Wright is leaving.
What?
Because we've completed the financial orders, but I did want to just recognize her. She's had a long day.
yes.
She drove to Mount Wachusett today. And she was honored with a number of other people by the small town administrators of Massachusetts for her role as one of the first circuit riders. This was a program that started in I won't say the date, but it was basically a state program to try to encourage more professional management and administration in small towns. So Miss Wright was actually assigned to the towns of Shelburne, Buckland, Coleraine, and Heath up in Franklin County. And that was from like 1985 to 1988. And so the circuit rider program eventually went out of business because all these towns realized, like, yeah, I guess we really do need like town administrators. So she was kind of like the shared circuit rider town administrator for those 4 towns, which one of them was my hometown.
And weren't you in high school then?
No, I had actually graduated. I was in the Air Force, so yeah, I was a little older than that. But anyway, so today the governor and the small town administrators association brought together a group of those first circuit riders, which became now the Small Town Administrators Association, and they recognized them. So, and that's why she's been doing a lot of driving today, but I wanted to publicly recognize her.
Thank you for that.
So,
Congratulations on that
When you
distinction.
run a small town, you have to be mindful of lots of details when you're an administrator. I think that's what makes her such a great administrator of our large operation, because she started in these small towns where there's really, there's one person basically who's doing everything. So anyway.
Congratulations. I hope you heard Counselor Nash's kind words, too.
Yes.
You were very busy. You're an excellent multitasker. All of us in our small city are really grateful to have you, so thank you.
Okay, well, I hope you get through the ordinances.
Drive safely.
Got a little ways to go yet.
Okay. We are on ordinances. 18.231, an ordinance relative to large-scale ground-mounted solar arrays. This is the second reading of this ordinance, so I'm not going to read it. I'm sure you guys are not sad. Is there a motion on this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Dwight.
Yes.
Counselor Labarge. Yes. Counselor Murphy.
Yes. I'd actually move we take the parking on Main Street, Florence, and Chestnut Street as a group.
Second.
It's been made and seconded to take those two as a group. All those in favor of doing that?
Aye.
Okay, we're going to take them as a group. So this is 19.039, an ordinance relative to parking on Main Street in Florence, and 19.052, an ordinance relative to parking on Chestnut Street. We need
No,
an,
and I apologize because I did second that, but I'm going to recuse myself from one of the votes. The first
that
one actually.
negate your
Main Street,
second?
Florence. And I went and seconded moving them as a group, so I'm complicating matters, and I realize I'm not helping speed things along. So.
okay. Is there a motion to take these as a group?
So moved.
There's a legitimate second over there. Okay. All those in favor of taking them as a group?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
A no or an abstention?
Well, I'm moving no, not
I
to
don't
take them
care.
as a group because I don't. I'll tell you what, I'm going to abstain on both. How's that?
If one's a problem, the other is too.
Exactly. Right.
Okay, they are moved as a group. Is there,
Move approval.
thank you. I need a second. Okay. Any discussion on either or both of these? No. Okay, roll call, please.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Councilor Dwight,
Abstain?
Councilor Bonner,
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. And second reading, so this is 19.054, an ordinance allowing marijuana testing and processing in core business districts. This is a first reading.
I would actually, well, I'm going to float this. I would like to move the marijuana ones as a group.
I would second that.
And that's up to item 19.058.
Okay,
That's, what do you,
Which is like H, I think.
DEF. Yeah. GH.
okay.
That spells.
All those in favor of taking those as groups, say aye.
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 Okay, we're going to take them as a group, but I'm going to read them because it's a first reading.
Oh, it's first reading.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Yeah, no, you should read them.
Okay.
I mean, you could waive reading. I'm sorry, I'm speaking out of turn. You could waive reading. And just have the planning director present them. I mean, we can waive the reading, but for the public record, these are in the public record, but also the video counts as a public record as well. So I don't know, it's entirely up to the committee.
What is the committee's pleasure?
I'll move we waive reading.
All those in favor of waiving reading?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, reading's been waived.
I actually abstain, I'm sorry.
Okay. One abstention
jerk.
on waiving reading.
So I think Director Fiden and I will kind of tag team a little bit on this.
Great.
One of the key components of the ordinances you have is when we first presented our zoning for adult use marijuana, we kind of broadly used manufacturing, which captures all different elements of cultivation, processing, and it also swept up into it testing labs. And so we want to come back now and revisit that because we realized that basically said that testing labs could only be in industrial areas and could only be in those sorts of areas. So this is an effort to try to go back because the testing labs are a much less intensive. It's a laboratory setting. It's believe you had some testimony at your committee from an actual scientist about what sort of processes goes on there.
Not at mine, but maybe at legislative matters.
I think legislative matters had. And so we, because we want to, we believe that we need to have testing labs to support this industry. And we have had inquiries from testing labs who are somewhat limited by our current zoning. This is an effort to allow them to be in areas. And it's not just marijuana testing labs, it's for other sorts of testing labs. So anyway, that's the background on that one. And so this just basically allows them in the core business districts as well as in the PD district. So those are those two changes. The next piece is about the filtration, which we've heard some public discussion about, and I said that we had been working on an ordinance. This just clarifies the filtration requirements that we expect in manufacturing and cultivation facilities, which is sort of based on the right now the kind of best practice around it, but it does allow for the possibility of a change in technology. And then the final one is about outdoor growing. And on this one, I think I'm going to let Director Fiden speak to this one. It was, again, an attempt to go back as we saw how this actually played out, and the fact that actually, even though it's outdoor growing, there's a lot of restrictions around security. There's actually a requirement that you build a building, like you have to build a building, even though it's outdoor cultivation. So there were some of those things that I think when we wrote the first ordinance were not as anticipated. And then also there's people, there's different interpretations of outdoor cultivation and some discussion from some potential applicants about wanting to build pretty permanent structures, which kind of turns them into a greenhouse pretending to be outdoor. So we wanted to really clarify that as well. So that's kind of what that's about. I'll let Director Fine get more into the,
Although,
I'm not going to say.
the mayor basically said everything I had to say.
You can't talk about this topic. No, you can't talk about this topic without, no.
Yes.
So I think of all the marijuana uses, at least so far, it's the outdoor growing that's been most controversial, although we've had nothing that's actually advanced. This is setting so this is not about the use. That may or may not be something we want to revisit in the future, but right now, outdoor growing is allowed. So this is really setting a use about the buildings. The city solicitor feels that in allowing outdoor growing, we have to allow the buildings, so we want to reasonably regulate them. And so this says no more than 1,000 square feet. It doesn't really get to be a greenhouse. It doesn't really get to be a making candy. It's really just the basic things you can wash your product and wash your hands and those kinds of things. So it is more restrictive than the current rules, probably not as much more restrictive as some people would like, but it's a step for dealing with what's been the most controversial part.
As you noted, this went to Community Resources, and we had long discussion and made some amendments, and then there was a joint hearing, Planning Board and Legislative Matters. Were you about to report out on that?
No, because I wasn't there.
Oh,
I was not in attendance.
It was extensive
yes.
and
Yeah.
informative.
Excellent.
Mine was simply a point of information. In addition to all these ordinances, there is required by law a host agreement with each applicant. So that there are many bites of the apple of each of these projects, including the planning process as well. So I appreciate these rules, so they give more brighter lines for
Everybody's.
within where someone can function. But at the same time, I think we should also be comforted by the fact that there are multiple opportunities for the public to participate in this and also submit their approval or disapproval, as it were.
Mr. Goodwill.
I would just add that when we had our extensive discussion at Community Resources, we acknowledged that this probably is not the last time we'll be seeing these matters, that it's an evolving field, regulation of the field is evolving, everybody's learning as we're going along, including the Cannabis Control Commission. And this is our best attempt at regulating based on what we know now, and it'll likely change sometime down the road.
Any other questions or discussion on this group of ordinances? No. Okay, so roll call, please, Laura, on these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ordinances.
Councilor Bidwell,
Yes.
Councilor Carney,
Yes?
Councilor Dwight,
Yes.
Councilor LeBarge.
Five.
Yes. Councilor Murphy,
Yes.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Sherrill.
Yes, there were only 5, sorry. 5. I miscounted. But yes. Okay, those all pass in first reading. And we are on to 19.062, an ordinance to amend Chapter 5 of the Code of Ordinances by amending Section 5-7, Special Municipal Employees. This is a second reading.
Move approval?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on this ordinance? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilor Carney,
Yes.
Councilor Dwight,
Yes.
Councilor LeBarge, Councilor Murphy,
Yes.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Sherrill, and
Yes.
Councilor Bidwell.
Yes.
Okay, we are on to a bunch of short-term rental zoning ordinances.
Which I would move as a group.
That may be
Second.
nice.
Second.
That's been made
Yeah.
and seconded. All in favor of moving these as a group?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so,
Waive reading with,
Why, what time is it?
Move we adjourn.
Careful, don't say that, it's a non-debatable.
No, don't go there.
there was a motion to
Motion to
waive
waive
reading.
reading.
It's been seconded. All those in favor of waiving reading of these? Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're gonna waive reading of these,
I
but I'm
abstain
gonna, Counselor Dwight is gonna abstain
from the waiving of the reading.
from waiving the reading.
This is another mail.
This is what I'm not going to read, but I'm going to tell you what they are. 19.068, an ordinance to amend zoning to add definitions of short-term rental and owner-occupied dwellings. 19.069, an ordinance to amend zoning to allow short-term rentals in WSP, SC, SR, and RR districts. 19.070, an ordinance to amend zoning to allow short-term rentals in URA and URB districts. 19.071, an ordinance to amend zoning to allow short-term rentals in the URC district. 19.072, an ordinance to amend zoning to allow short-term rentals in GB and NB districts. 19.073, an ordinance to amend zoning to allow short-term rentals in the CB, EB, HB, and OI districts. And 19.074, an ordinance to amend zoning to allow bed and breakfast and short-term rentals in the PV district. Any discussion? Wayne, would you like to tell us about all of those?
Sure, I'll just give you the very brief version. So obviously you've acted tonight on how trust fund money gets spent from short-term rentals. For the most part, we see short-term rentals as being great for the city in terms of bringing in business and tourism and bringing supplemental income for property owners. There are two potential concerns. Many cities that are much more resorty than we are have lost a lot of rental units. They become less affordable as units convert. That's probably not a risk here, but it's certainly a potential issue. And then many neighborhoods, or some neighborhoods, worry about the amount of traffic that comes in. We think on the whole that they're a good thing, and so the proposal here is basically allowing short-term rentals in all neighborhoods, basically all places where we allow residential, but requiring registration. The point of registration is not so much, frankly, the registration, it's to prevent grandfathering, because if we allow short-term rentals just now everywhere, and then 2 years from now, council says, oh, this is horrible, everybody who's had one is grandfathered. In allowing registration, it basically means you're only guaranteed your ability to have this rental for a year, and then if a year from now council wants to come back and say, hey, it's not working, we're getting too many of these, we want to have different regulations in the district, then the uses, once the registration runs out, wouldn't be grandfathered. So it's really a test. It's a go slow. Almost certainly, just like marijuana, we will come back before you in a year or two or three, whether it's to liberalize or not liberalize, will be up to all of you.
Sort of akin to Mr. Miller's 1 year cast of parameters. The zoning board granted them a 1 year. So they can have reserved the right to come back and say it's not working, sort of similar to
We should note that this also went to a joint public hearing for planning and legislative matters.
Which is very informative.
Also very informative. Excellent. Any further questions or comment on this group? No? Okay, roll call, please.
I just have to clarify,
Yes.
if group, you took a voice vote to act on them as a group, is a separate motion needed to approve it after the...
Yeah, and there was one. There- Council Murphy moved them as a group. It was seconded, and then there was a motion to waive reading that was seconded and voted on as well.
So is that motion that
Is
you
it
made
on-
to move as a
do we ever
group
put it on
now
the floor?
sufficient as a...
What-
make
or
a
do we have to
motion
move it on?
The whole group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
They're all
on the
not.
floor, and
So let's go with
for what
that.
it's worth,
All
sort
right,
of.
second. He just moved, so I think the question is whether it's enough that we say, I think what you're
That they're
suggesting,
moving.
Laura, is that we have to do
Right.
two things. We have to first say we're going to take them as a group, and then again, move approval as a group. And have two motions.
One motion was
Right,
sufficient
and
to-
so I think, well, what we have been doing is two motions for all. At first, we would move them as a group, and then we'd move approval. So
did that,
we
though.
might as well, no, but we didn't. We only moved to take them as a group.
I'm sorry, we voted both. I'm pretty sure. We voted to put it on the floor, and then also vote, okay, we'll prepare. we can
Now
do it again.
let's vote to,
Move them as a group.
we've moved them. They're moved. We're
And
going
then
to
we
approve
waive
them
the
now.
reading, so we're.
We waived, roll call. Yes, roll call.
But better safe than sorry, so I
Hey.
seconded.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Councilor
Counselor.
I put it away.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nash. Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Okay, and this is when you guys are really, those were approved. This is where you guys really hate me because it feels like the end, but
We have something.
the bulk of the agenda we still have in front of us. First, what we're going to do is actually go back to what was number 5, which is updates from the council president and committee chairs. There is a letter from our council president. He's clearly thinking about us, even though he's not here. Honorable members, this is dated June 6, 2019. Honorable members of the City Council, in accordance with R 19.012, a resolution establishing a select committee on pesticide reduction as amended by R 19.047 and Section 2.6.3 of the council rules, I am appointing the following people to the Select Committee on Pesticide Reduction. 1, Counselor Elisa Klein. 2, Counselor James Nash. 3, Adele Franks. 4, Kate Simmons. 5, Cynthia Swopis. And, sorry, I should have said Counselor Klein is Ward 7, Counselor Nash is Ward 3, Adele Franks is 123 Black Birch Trail, Kate Simmons, 11 Wilder Place, Cynthia Swopis, 120 Coles Meadow Road. Although the council's resolution authorized me to appoint up to 10 members, I've chosen to constitute the committee at a smaller size, and I believe will ultimately be more manageable and effective. I fully expect the committee will be able to rely on other outside advisors as they conduct their study, hold hearings, and receive testimony. As best as I could, I've tried to make appointments consistent with the resolution's goal that appointees possess, quote, expertise in the professional fields of agriculture, recreation, forestry, turf management, organic and/or IPM land care, conservation, public health, or other related fields, or who are representatives from the public schools, end quote. To help the members of the committee understand the requirements of serving as a member of a public body, the city solicitor has graciously agreed to appear at the committee's initial meeting to provide an overview and answer questions. Of course, even before their first meeting, members will collectively be a public body and should not hold discussions among a majority of members outside of public session. Lastly, please note that as provided by Council Rule 2.6.3, the appointee I first announced in this letter, namely Councilor Klein, will serve as temporary chair until the committee elects a chair. I thank all members of this committee for their willingness to serve, and I look forward to their efforts. Sincerely, Ryan O'Donnell.
And it's worth noting, we just authorized them special membership status.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. The other thing I'm going to do is read an announcement regarding executive session minutes. The Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 22, requires public bodies to regularly review minutes of executive session to determine if they may be disclosed. The executive session minutes of November 16th, 2017, February 21st, 2019, and March 21st, 2019 have been reviewed. It has been determined that, because of pending legal action and ongoing contract negotiations, disclosure would defeat the lawful purpose of the executive sessions, so continued non-disclosure is warranted. We are now moving to back to the consent agenda. Okay. Do I read it first? I've lost track.
Yeah,
And then
you can ask for a motion after you read what the items are.
May I suggest too, one thing about all these appointments is they all are for the same term, from July 2019 to June 2022. So that might just save some,
About
don't have to
3
read that
minutes,
37
yeah.
times.
Okay. Thank you for noting that. Okay, first up, 19.040 appointments on the Council of Aging. This is Robert Dion of 87 Vernon.
Excuse me,
Sorry, yeah.
the minutes, we have to do the.
Where are they? Oh, I missed them.
Yeah.
They're up here. Okay. Minutes of May 16th, 2019. First. Then B, it's 19 point, so this is Council on Aging, Robert Dion, 87 Vernon Street, Northampton. As Councilor Carney noted, the term for all of these is April 2019.
Except this one, I don't know. Except this only one, except only this one.
The term for Robert Dion is April 2019 to June 2021 to fulfill the unexpired term of Jean Petty. Next is the housing.
And, the next batch, they're.
Forget it.
Housing partnership. This is Carmen Juno, 73 Straw Avenue in Florence. The corrected term is March 2019 to June 2022. Okay, we already did C, which was the business owner's permit. Moving to D, 19.065, appointments to various committees, all positive recommendations. I'm not going to read the removals because they've been removed. So first up, this is for the Arts Council. Courtney Hummel, 320 Elm Street, to the Board of Assessors. Denny Nolan, 319 Elm Street. These all seem to be July 2019 to June 2022. Next is Board of Health, Joanne Levin, 40 Columbus Avenue, reappointment. Council on Aging, Donna Park, 205 Prospect Street, reappointment. Moving down to still Council on Aging, Benjamin Capistrant, 48 High Street, reappointment. Now we're at the Community Preservation Committee, Brian Adams, 36 Arlington Street, reappointment. Conservation Commission, C. Mason Marone, 18 Ellington Road, reappointment. Randy Krotowski, 171 Emerson Way, it's a reappointment. Disability Commission, Emma Cornwell, 35 Holyoke Street, reappointment. Now this is the Historical Commission, Martha Lyon, 313 Elm Street, reappointment. Craig Della Penna, 62 Chestnut Street, that's a reappointment. Housing Partnership, Tess Perone Poe, 32 Masonic Street. This is to the Housing Partnership, and it's to fill a vacancy as representative from the Planning Board. The Human Rights Commission, Karen Bella Vance Grace, 19 Church Street, it's a reappointment. Moving on to Parks and Rec Committee, Thomas Dunphy, 6 Chesterfield Road in Leeds, that is a reappointment. David Cronin, 103 Pioneer Knolls Extension, that is also a reappointment. Planning Board, which is Terry Colhane. There was something.
Withdrawn.
That's the one. I knew that. There's something.
Yep.
Okay, so we are not going to read that. It's been withdrawn. Krista Granat, 492 Elm Street. That's a reappointment. Zoning Board of Appeals, Elizabeth Silver, 67 Willow Street. Reappointment. Sarah Northrop, 147 Hinckley Street. That's a reappointment. Now we're moving on to another bunch. Also all with positive recommendations from City Services. Community Preservation Committee, Linda Morley, 244 Prospect Street, reappointment. Patrick Bowen, the Housing Partnership, Patrick Bowen, 495 Straw Avenue, reappointment. Alexander Jarrett, 8 High Street, reappointment. Gordon Shaw, 582 Haydenville Road, reappointment. Planning Board, Tess Perone Poe, 32 Masonic Street, number 4, reappointment. Now we're on to the Whiting Street Fund Committee. Michael Quinlan, 712 Bridge Road, it's a reappointment. Now, these next batch are to be referred to City Services. Arts Council, Danielle Amadeo, 50 Union Street, number 13, to fill the unexpired term of Dara Herman Zerling. Conservation Commission, Jason Perry, 14 Carolyn Street. This is a reappointment. Disability Commission, Judith Kimberly, 693 Park Hill Road, reappointment. Jean Page, 46 Evergreen Road, number 107, reappointment. Chris Plamas, 659 Park Hill Road, reappointment. Human Rights Commission, Jeremy Whalen, 31 Union Street, it's a reappointment. Public Shade Tree Commission, Marilyn Castriota, reappointment. And so those are all of those that are being referred to City Services. Next up, we have a petition for the annual second-hand dealer licenses. Renewal license for Electric Eye Records, 52 Main Street, number 6. Petitioner Andrew Crespo. And Ryan's Jewelers, 14 Strong Avenue. Petitioner John Malakowski.
And I move approval of the consent agenda.
Been made and seconded. No discussion on the consent agenda.
Do voice vote.
All those in favor, please say.
Aye. Can we recess for finance committee?
So, did we get it all, everybody?
You slammed it. I'd like to move to adjourn
Second.
Second.
very much.
No discussion on that. Thank you, everybody.